Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Deggy again, back with another Disney Lorcana card of the day. Now, today's card of the day is going to be Olaf, Friendly Snowman. Olaf is a 1-cost Amethyst card, but he is inkable, so he can be placed into your inkwell. He has 1 strength, 3 willpower, and 1 lore. He has no abilities, none at all, and he's also an uncommon for his rarity, which is very unusual. You would think he would be a common, but he's not. He's actually an uncommon. Now, why am I talking about Olaf? Like, why is, does he have a card of the day? I did talk about the Wardrobe, who's another vanilla character. That was like my first Amethyst card when I was doing, like a theme color like once a day. But I do like that Wardrobe because for her cost, she's able to really put in some work with challenging and you can quest basically for free. Your opponent's going to have a hard time getting rid of something with 4 lore. And with that in mind, that mentality also translates to Olaf. On your first turn, if you're able to put down an Olaf, you're going to get a fair amount of lore. Olaf is deceptively good. In the early game, his real only counter is if your opponent plays a Captain Hook. Or I guess it could also do something like a Prince Eric on their second turn. The thing is, opponents are not going to want to devote resources to take out Olaf, which is why he's kind of deceptively good. Again, aside from like an early game Captain Hook, you would have to put in some work to get rid of Olaf. Olaf has 3 willpower, so he cannot be banished to the Fire the Cannons card, whereas every other turn 1 drop or 1-cost character can be removed with the Fire the Cannons. He does get banished to a Smash, the Steel action card Smash, but it would feel really bad to have to use a Smash card on Olaf, which is why a lot of opponents aren't really going to want to do that. So what you simply do with Olaf is just quest. You just put him in play and you just start questing. And it's kind of like a soft taunt mechanic. In the Hearthstone game, there are characters with this ability called Taunt, and when you put them in play, your opponent has to target those characters before they can say target your life total or before they can target any of your other characters. But there are some characters that come down that have really, really impactful abilities or really powerful, but they do not have Taunt. But your attention is still put onto them. That's called a soft taunt. It's like, I know my opponent is going to have their attention on this card, even though it doesn't have taunt. Your opponent's going to be attacking it with their creatures, even if it, if it had taunt, they would have been doing it anyway. That's the mentality. Olaf's going to come down, and your opponent's going to look at it and be like, well, if I want to remove this Olaf, I'm going to have to put some resources into doing it. So it's kind of a win-win for you. Either your opponent has to use resources on Olaf that's then not going to be used on your other characters, or your opponent is just going to ignore Olaf while Olaf just keeps gaining you lore turn after turn. It is pretty good. I think he's a very, very powerful turn 1 play in that regard, especially if you're playing against a deck that doesn't feature steal. He's able to get you like 2 to 3 lore by himself at the very least. And that's not counting you putting down other characters and then, gaining lore with those and having those characters have an impact on the board. It wouldn't be until turns like 3 and 4, maybe even, further, where your opponent can put a character into play that can actually take out Olaf in one shot. That'd be stuff like, the Wardrobe. There are, 3 strength characters, but they tend to cost a little more or are situational, like through a challenge or something. But Olaf coming down early is just deceptively good. Like, he's not bad. He doesn't really offer too much else when he comes on the field, though. He doesn't really have any good synergies because of his characteristics. He's just a story-born ally. If we do see some ally support, that might be nice, but I don't think so. We might not see that in the first set. So he's basically just your generic turn 1 drop. He can be used for ink, though, which is very solid. So if you get him later in the game, and you don't feel like, he's in a good spot to be played or whatever, you can always just use him for ink. And that's really good. I think that he's useful at any stage of the game. You're able just to play him on your first couple turns to get that lore, or put him into your ink later on so you can play your higher costed cards. Or if you're just trying to flood the board, you can put down an Olaf. He's not, say, as impactful in a way as some other turn 1 plays. Like, you could play a turn 1 Pascal, and then on your second turn play another character, and now that Pascal has evasive, and that Pascal can now gain lore without fear of being challenged, but that Pascal could be targeted by, say, a Fire the Cannons. You could do the same thing with this Olaf, and Olaf could be targeted by Fire the Cannons, but he's not going to be banished. He would actually have 1 willpower left, which would mean your opponent would have to either challenge him with another character or use another Fire the Cannons on him. He is also not like the purple 1-drop Maleficent where he can start gaining 2 lore, but you have to be careful with that Maleficent because she has no protection. Yes, she does gain 2 lore right away, but if your opponent also played a turn 1 character, and if you want to start questing with that Maleficent, well, you're probably going to lose her in a challenge right away. Whereas with this Olaf, the only character that could take him out would be a turn 1 Captain Hook. Overall, I'm actually, pleasantly surprised by this Olaf. Right now, I think he actually is he's pretty strong as a turn 1 play, able to get you some lore essentially for free. I think he's also really good in multiplayer because with more people are not going to be looking at your Olaf. They're going to be like, oh, it's just Olaf, it is what it is. But you can just every turn get, quest for some lore. Your opponents are going to be more focused on each other's more powerful characters. But, over the course of, several turns, you could get quite a bit of lore, with this character. With your opponent's attentions turned elsewhere, an Olaf on the field can get you, 4, 5 lore or so just by himself. I mean, if you played a turn 1 Maleficent, your opponent's going to be paying attention to that. But a turn 1 Olaf, people are going to be like, oh, it's just Olaf, If he was like a 1 strength, 2 willpower, I don't think he'd get as much attention. He'd probably be a common, because he just could be challenged by like almost every other turn 1 character. But with 3 willpower, now he can't. Now you have to think about how you're going to get rid of him, if you even want to get rid of him. So overall, I think he's actually pretty good. I do like this Olaf. When I play Amethyst, I like to include Olaf. I think he's a solid turn 1 play. He's not bad. I don't think he's terrible. Like, I would not feel bad putting down Olaf. I'm going to get at least 1 lore, probably 2, maybe even more. It just depends on what my opponent does. If my opponent is playing, like, I could be up against a Sapphire Amber deck, and there's nothing in that deck, early on that can really challenge my Olaf and be able to banish them. It would take a few attempts by a couple characters in order to banish my Olaf, and I like that. I think that's bulky. He's a surprisingly bulky early game character who can just get you some lore and just help you win. But overall though, like, what do I think of this Olaf? Again, I like him. I do think he's surprisingly good. I put him at probably, again, around a 7 out of 10. He is able to get some lore. I think in a multiplayer game, he can get you a bit more lore because, again, opponents aren't really going to be focused on him. So he might rise a little bit more, like 7.5-ish or so, maybe an 8. I think he's a bit more powerful in multiplayer, but if you're playing a deck that's trying to get as much lore as possible, I think that Olaf should be a solid consideration just because he is able to survive attacks and just help you get more lore. You just have to be careful when you play him. You don't want to play him and then quest when you know your opponent is just going to, say, easily trade into him with like a Prince Eric or a Captain Hook Forceful Duelist. But yeah, that's Olaf in a nutshell. He's not too bad. I like him. I think he's pretty good. He's deceptively good. He can be used for ink, and he can get you some lore in the early games a bit easier than you think he would. But yeah, hey, thanks for watching though. It means a lot. I really do like talking about these cards and giving my opinions. It helps me think and stuff. I don't really write scripts for these. Like, I think about them like throughout the day. Like, I'll do a video and then throughout the day I'll be like, oh, what card am I going to talk about next? And then I think about that card. Olaf kind of sprung up on me. I thought about him last night and I was like, oh, I should talk about Olaf. So here we are talking about Olaf, surprisingly. But hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. You stay safe out there, make good decisions, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.